Gregory. So I know you don't have a clue who I am or what I do, but I'm D'Ambria. I'm from Houston. I've been a chef for, man, about 5 years now, and I love food. I've always loved food. I know skinny old me, but I have always loved a good meal. I'm the owner of Sophisticated Delights Catering here, and I've got this bold, bubbly personality, but I can be an introvert and I can be pretty chill. As you can see, I've got my ponytail in today and my t-shirt, because that's who I am. I'm a t-shirt and jeans type of gal with a little bit of wine on the side. This dish today that I'm gonna make is probably truly who I am. It's something my mother used to always cook for me, which was chicken fried steak, because that's her favorite thing. So it ended up being mine, but I kind of made it a little more fancy with the 4 cheese mac and cheese and turning around and adding Brussels sprouts to it. But that's who I am. It's a little bit traditional, a little bit funky, a little bit classic, a little bit upscale. I'm just all over the place, to be honest. I think through this series, since this will be the first time you guys are watching Delicious Detours, you'll see how funky and how weird and quirky I am. But I hope you love me just as much as I do. But yeah, let's get started, guys. I'm super excited about this journey. And I hope that you learn a lot about food and about cooking. And I hope it really hits your lifestyle. I hope one episode at least really impacts who you are and your lifestyle and what you like. Because you're going to have some home style foods in here. We're going to have some health foods. We're going to have a good combination. And so I really want you guys to comment and tell me what you think, and follow us and watch us week after week, and let me know what you want to see. If there's something that you have in your head that you want to see as an episode, let me know. So that way next time we can film about that as well. It's not just about what I like, it's about what you all want and how I can make lives easier for you guys. Because cooking's always been a breeze for me, to be honest. I mean, as a kid it was difficult, but coming into being a teenager, it was my heart and soul, my stress days. I would sit there and cook all the time and eat and eat and eat until I couldn't eat anymore. And that's just always who I've been. But life changed and some lifestyle changes had to be made. And in the midst of all of that, I've become who I am today. So even though I introduce myself as D'Ambria, you can call me D. That's who I am, Chef D. So let's get started, guys. I'm super excited. So I've got a nice ribeye. This is about 8 ounces, but I went ahead and pounded it out so it's a little bit thinner because it'll cook faster, especially since we're frying it. I don't want the meat to be super raw in the middle, but I don't want it to be over well done either. So we're hoping that we get a nice medium to medium well in the middle of this chicken fried steak, so the meat's still juicy but it's crunchy. We got some Brussels sprouts, and we're gonna do some funky stuff with that as well. Ooh, I'm gonna take a sip. It was a long-winded conversation we just had. Okay, so I've got a baking sheet ready to go with some parchment paper, because y'all, I don't do dishes. If you didn't know, I'm a chef, but I don't do dishes. That's not my thing. But we're gonna add some olive oil to our baking sheet. Keep it simple. It's like a tablespoon, I think. And then we're gonna toss on our Brussels sprouts. So this is enough for like 2 people because they shrink a lot. So it's a good kind of like date night thing if you wanna show people how southern you are with a little bit of twang. You can do this, and since we're dating today for the first time, I figured this would be the perfect meal for you guys to get to know me. So we add those on there. We're gonna add some butter as well, and it'll kind of melt as it cooks. We're also gonna add some onion and some fresh garlic. So our secret ingredient, and you'll learn all about this next episode, but for now, this is known as our steakhouse seasoning, which is what we're gonna use pretty much to season everything, because I want this to be simple. And so we're gonna just sprinkle that on there. And I say maybe like 2 tablespoons is good. I like mine a little salty, but you definitely don't have to have it that way. And then I got half a piece of bacon, so we're not gonna go crazy with it. I really could, but we're not gonna go too crazy with the bacon. And we're just gonna cut it into a couple little pieces, nothing crazy. And then we're gonna just kind of sprinkle it on there. This is the secret. We're gonna add a little lemon juice. And lastly, this is really cool, guys, because I try my best, being from Texas, to utilize a lot of other small businesses. I think that we've got to support each other. These big corporations are eating us alive, but you know, what's wrong with supporting other small business? So I've got some honey, and this is a jalapeno and a habanero infused honey, and this is made by Lone Star Bee Co. I'm here in Houston. It's so good. It's got this sweet spice to it, and I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way in this particular item. And so we're gonna drizzle some honey on there. And this is when we get nasty. We're gonna put our hands in it. And so we'll toss it on there with our oil. Make sure we get all of them nice and oily. And then we'll kind of spread it back out so that it's even. And the butter you can kind of like break into little pats if you like. But it'll melt naturally too, so if you leave it in a big hunk, it's not gonna kill you. And we're gonna put this in the oven on 425 degrees for about 20 or 30 minutes or so, but that'll give us time to cook everything else for this dish, including get our guests another glass of wine. So since like I said that we're dating each other, we'll pour you a glass of wine, and we'll have plenty of time to cook together and multitask. I look forward to it. Alrighty, so now we're gonna batter our chicken fried steak, and I know you guys are thinking, who is this girl coming out of nowhere? But this show for me it's kind of an experiment. I'm kind of figuring things out as I go, and I kind of want you guys to take this journey along with me. I just started Delicious Detours, and I'm super excited about the kickoff of it. It's such a cool thing to do, and I'm not a big social media person. Let me tell you that. In all honesty, you guys, I really kind of hate social media. I feel like that's gonna be real taboo to somebody. I'm not a big fan of it, but I really wanted to get my journey out there and my story and let you guys ride along, right? So this delicious train of detours of food. So here in the bowl, I just mixed some milk and egg. So 1 egg and like a half a cup of milk. You don't need a whole bunch of it. And we just left it pretty plain. And we're using that same steakhouse seasoning, and we're gonna season here, here, and here. So in our flour, which is just plain white flour, and then our steak as well. You wanna season all the components of your meals every single time, because that way you make sure that there's flavor throughout your food, right? So if you just season the meat, and then you don't season the crust, then the crust is bland. Even when you put a good gravy on it, it's still gonna be bland, so we don't want that. And then once you season your meat and you put it inside this egg wash, and the egg wash is bland, it takes your seasoning off your meat. So that's why it's important to season every single component so that you keep consistency through your meal. So we'll just let it kind of dredge in there. It's nice and thick. And y'all, I think this is, cooking was important to me because my great grandmother was a big part of my life. And so every Sunday after church, it would literally be like 20, 30 of us plus, depending on the week, in one house crammed together. And I remember as a kid, sitting on a treadmill, yes, y'all, sitting on a treadmill, because there'd be no space to actually eat at the table as a kid, and they would cook for hours and hours. But food was love. Like, food was everything to me because it was the moments that I had with my family. There was never a get together that we had that I wasn't eating, or that food wasn't present. And so that's literally what it is. So for this, since we're using a ribeye steak, I just really want to do a one-time batter because I want the steak to shine through this. I want the crust to be important. So we're going to flip it in there a couple times and make sure that it's nice and coated everywhere, but we're only going to dredge one time. So we'll shake off some of our excess flour, and you can tell it's a ribeye because I got the fat pulling apart right there. But you can use a different steak, but this steak I think was like $3, guys. So this is a pretty cheap date night. So we're gonna wash our hands, and we're gonna take that over to our pan, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about that as well. And we're gonna get some macaroni started because that's my favorite side of all time. Alrighty, so we've come over to the stove to start our mac and cheese. But isn't my shirt pretty, guys? No, I'm just joking. So the first thing we wanna do is add a few tablespoons of butter. So it's about 2 tablespoons of butter because we wanna start and make like a roux if you've ever made one before. Since we're making our mac and cheese from scratch. So we're gonna pull that up, right? So our butter's in there, and we're gonna get that started, and it's gonna melt down. We're gonna go ahead and add some flour. So this is like 1/4 cup of flour to this roux. And so we're gonna get that going. And so next we're gonna add some heavy cream. I'm gonna hop over to the fridge to grab it. So we're gonna add some heavy cream. So we're gonna mix that in that butter with the flour, create little baby lumps, and you just wanna add a little heavy cream at a time and then just stir crazy. So if your spatula doesn't work when you're trying to stir crazy, use a fork, and it'll make it a little bit easier to kind of mash in those little lumps so that you don't end up with lumpiness, or a whisk. Whatever you have that's a little more convenient. So we're gonna stir it in there. I'm short, guys, so I gotta like look over the stove like a little kid, but it's all right. Because you'll notice that this will start to thicken your heavy cream instantly. So we're creating a roux, and if you just keep stirring it, at first you'll feel like, oh my God, these lumps are never going anywhere. But they will. I mean, that's kind of the thing about making homemade mac and cheese. It takes a little bit longer than the regular stuff, but you can get it done pretty quick once you get it down. So, and you can kind of see that I've got that roux going. So now it's kind of like a little paste, right? And then we're gonna add a little more heavy cream because we wanna add it slowly so that way we don't have any lumps in this macaroni and it's just cheesy goodness. Alrighty. Now as you can see, it's starting to thin out. And you're just literally gonna keep going until it's pretty thin, actually. So now we got a nice kind of smooth consistency. We're gonna add heavy cream one more time. We're gonna dump in our cheeses, and I'm gonna tell you what cheeses I use. So as a kid, to be honest, and my mom's probably gonna hate me, guys, for saying this, but my grandmother was always big. My great grandmother was always big on, you know, feeding us fresh vegetables and stuff like that. And my mom was a little bit of a lazy cook when I first was little, so she used to give us like king spinach, stuff like that. And I actually always disliked vegetables until I had my first job. So my first job was at Texas Roadhouse, and I started out as a hostess, guys. I don't really like people. I like people, but I don't, kind of thing. And it made me interact with people 1,000 times more. And so since I had to, I got into food a lot more. Like, I actually like to cook, but it made me kind of step out my box. I went from my super well done burnt charred steak to, oh, I like my steak medium rare. So it kind of cultivated me as more of a foodie, I would say. So we're gonna add in our cheeses, and you'll see we got 4 different types of cheese. We have a mild cheddar cheese, a sharp cheddar cheese. We also have Gouda, and then I also have some mozzarella, because they all kind of serve different purposes. So your mild and your sharp cheddar just give you that traditional cheddar cheese look and feel to your meal, that stringy cheese that you want. The mozzarella it gives it a salty tone to it. It gives it a saltiness that you don't get necessarily with the cheddar. And then your Gouda actually just kind of gives it a kind of a twang at the end. So I love all of those, and we're gonna dump that cheese right in. And then once we get the cheese in, because now our mix is actually really smooth, we can just fold it in with our spatula. And it'll start to melt pretty quick. Now, depending on the thickness, based on how much cream you've added, which you'll see the recipe below so that you can replicate this the exact same way, we're gonna add just a little more heavy cream, and it's gonna take a few minutes to melt. You'll see it start to pull together, and then you'll start to get that creaminess and cheese that pulls to the side. And I'm gonna add a little bit more heavy cream. You can also use milk if you don't have heavy cream. Either one is fine, but I like heavy cream because it keeps my sauce pulled together more. I don't know if you guys ever had that soupy mac and cheese that some people make, and you're like, why isn't my cheese on my noodles type of thing? And that's really why a lot of times is because of the milk. But if you have a combination, then that's a good way to save money, because heavy cream is more expensive than milk. So you can use a little bit of both, and you'll still get a really good product. So we're mixing. And like I said, guys, it'll take a few minutes to pull together, so don't worry. And you don't have to constantly stir it. I'm doing that just because you're looking at me, to be honest. If you want me to be real, if I was at home, I'd walk away and wouldn't worry about it. But for you guys, I'll be nice. So we've got that, and I'm gonna add heavy cream in there one more time because we got a real thick cheesiness, but I love it though when it's like this, because it's like, oh, look at, yeah, see, that's that cheesiness you want. It sticks to the noodles. So we've got that. We're gonna add just a little bit more heavy cream, and then we're gonna go ahead and add some more of steakhouse seasoning, because like I said, we're gonna use this on everything throughout, because it'll keep cooking really easy for you. So we're gonna add a tablespoon of that. And that's got garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, but you'll see the video on how to make it specifically with all the ingredients as well. All right, so I'm gonna let that come together. We're gonna step over and actually put our chicken fried steak in the pan, and then we're gonna add our noodles to our mac and cheese and pop it in the oven with our Brussels sprouts, and then we'll make our gravy for our chicken fried steak as well. Alrighty guys, so we're gonna put this chicken fried steak in our pan, and as you can see, I drink while I cook. I'm pretty lazy in real life. But we want to cook it on a low, so I use gas. You can use electric, so it doesn't honestly matter. As a cook, I prefer gas because I can kind of check my temperature a little bit better, but that's not a big deal. But I want to keep it pretty low because I don't want to burn our crust. It's nothing worse than a chicken fried steak where it's seasoned well, but the outside is just too dark. It's too burnt, so then you don't really get to taste or enjoy the coating. So So we're gonna add it in there and you'll get the sizzle. And it's enough oil in there just to get to the top. It's not gonna cover it because we don't wanna deep fry it. So we can make sure that we cook it evenly on both sides, but we're gonna get to the brim of that. So we've got that in there. We're gonna let that cook for a few moments and then we'll flip it in about 3 minutes. In the meantime, we're gonna go ahead and fold in our noodles and put our mac and cheese in the oven. Alrighty guys, so we've got our sauce ready and our chicken fried steak is over here cooking. And so our sauce is perfect. It's a nice thin, thick consistency, so it's not too thin, but it sticks to the spatula, but it runs off. That's kind of what you want to look for. So we're gonna toss our noodles in there. And I already cooked these, so because you just follow the instructions on the bag to boil the noodles. I'm not from Italy, so I'm not gonna tell you guys I'm over here making pasta. I'd be lying to you, like bold lying to you guys if I told you I was back here making noodles to make macaroni. It's a craft, to be honest. So we're gonna just break those bad boys up and get in that cheese sauce and we're gonna mix it up. So I like my mac and cheese pretty cheesy. So but of course you can add more noodles to it, but since I'm gonna bake my mac and cheese because that's how I grew up on it, when you bake it, the noodles start to absorb all the cheese over time, and so it becomes drier. So you almost want it to be a little over liquidy or a little over cheesy than maybe the way you want it, so that way once it bakes, then it still is the perfect texture consistency for you. So I've got a loaf pan. It's a little small one, like maybe what you use for bread, or some people use it for, like bundt cakes and stuff like that. You can use it. And we just put a little parchment paper at the bottom so I don't have to really wash it too much. Because the bottom is what tends to scorch the most. And let me pour it from the other side so you can see it. And so we'll get that in there. Like I said, and it's a little over cheesy if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I need some more noodles. No, it's gonna bake and it's gonna be so good. And I kind of like it to have a little extra cheese because then I end up like sopping my veggies in it, or if I have bread with it, I end up just throwing everything in the cheese. And then I've got some more shredded cheese that we use to make it. I'm gonna just put it on top. If you want, you can add breadcrumbs if you like breadcrumbs on your mac and cheese. But my mother actually despises it, so I end up never getting it as a kid, but who cares? I'm an adult, but I eat it either way. We're gonna pop it in our oven till we get the top of it nice and broiled. Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and flip our chicken fried steak, and you can kind of see in the pan that it's got a lot of blood on the top of it. That lets me know that it's ready to flip, but also you can kind of peek at the crust. And so it's got that perfect kind of thin, thick crust on it. And we'll flip it over. So while this is cooking, I'm gonna kind of tell you guys what I'm gonna end up putting in the gravy. So it's a little non-traditional than maybe what I would normally do if I was back home in East Texas. But I like to elevate things every blue moon. So we've got some chicken stock, some heavy cream, garlic, and then some mushrooms, because I'm going to do like a mushroom gravy on top of this. Especially since we're doing a ribeye, I want to kind of up the ante here. And we've got about 3/4 cup of heavy cream, and as well as some chicken stock. And this is about a cup of chicken stock that we're going to use. Now you see I got my coffee mug over here, and you're thinking, I thought you were drinking wine. I am. This coffee mug is to take some of this oil out of the pan. In order to make gravy, you have to have some fat content. And so, and let me tell you, this is not the healthiest meal. This is probably the indulgent meal that you feed yourself when you're sad and you need to pick me up, or if you've had a long day and you kind of just really don't care and you need that glass of wine with some good food. This is going to be that meal. But we'll get a paper towel and put here in our pan for our chicken fried steak, because we want to make sure it's not soggy. We want to keep it crispy once it's done cooking on the other side. And then we're going to take our pan and we're going to take all that extra grease. Not all. We'll take that back. We're going to take the majority of it. So we'll probably save about 1/4 cup of the oil in the bottom. And the rest of it we're just going to pour in our coffee mug. If you're in a regular home or something like that, you don't want to pour oil down your sink. You prefer to cool down. It's a little bit easier to dispose of that way. Now, if you're in the country like us, and somebody's gonna talk about me, so we burn trash and we feed our dogs all the scraps, and someone's gonna say, oh my God, that's not good for your animals. I didn't know any better, okay? I was a kid, I just lived there. So for us, you just throw the bones outside and the scraps, and so we burn trash and all of that. So we kind of aren't necessarily the most environmentally friendly, but it worked for us in the time. So once we get this cooked out, we'll put the oil in here, and then we're gonna go ahead and start with our gravy. All right, guys, so our chicken fried steak is ready on this side. And the reason we want to use the oil from the chicken fried steak is, one, we're not wasteful in the country. You're going to use this oil. It's good for more than one use, so you're going to use it all. But you see that? That looks so good. We're going to pull it over here and put it in our paper towel so that it can dry off. And then in a few seconds, we'll flip it over to let it do. So you'll see all that oil. If you're afraid of hot things in real life, one, I'm gonna tell you to man up. But other than man up, don't do it over the burner, because then you're just gonna blow yourself up. So step to the side a little bit. Put your coffee cup down. That's why you use a coffee cup, because you can actually hold it, because it can handle hot stuff like coffee. He's gonna pour. So we'll leave, like I said, a little bit of the oil in there, just like that. We'll put it back down to make our gravy. And so the first thing we want to do to our gravy is we want to add our mushrooms and our garlic, so they get a chance to cook a little bit, because we want to flavor all of this oil even more than we already have with the chicken fried steak. And this oil has all of that all of the flavor from the meat, but we're still using the same seasoning, guys, because we're keeping it simple. You know, nobody has time for all that extra stuff at home. So add a little seasoning in there, and you might want to season it a little bit more once you finish tasting it when it's done, but we'll start it that way. And so you'll go ahead and get a spoon or a spatula, whatever you want to use to make this happen. And so I'm going to use a spatula today. Make sure it's a burn resistant spatula if you're going to use that. If not, use a whisk. So we'll toss our mushrooms around in here. Now, if you guys remember, we had some flour left over from our chicken fried steak, and that's how we're going to make our base roux for this. So I'm going to step over here and grab the flour, and then we're going to add a couple tablespoons and mix it all up. And add the rest of our ingredients. All right, so we've got our mushrooms and our onions, and our mushrooms have got just the perfect golden brown. We don't want them black, because then they're burnt, but a nice golden brown. Our mushrooms are cooked down. So now we're gonna just kind of sprinkle in some flour. And remember that flour seasoned too, guys, so we're just seasoning it throughout. And so we're gonna add that flour in there, and then you'll kind of notice when it's roux ready, and I'll tell you. As you see, it's already starting to soak up the oil. The oil's kind of dissipating in a sense. We'll add a little bit more, because you want it to still kind of make that same type of paste that we just had with the mac and cheese. But you want to add little by little, because if you add too much, then you don't have gravy. You got like soup, or I don't even know what to describe it. You got clumpy crab. That's what you got. You got clumpy crab if you cook it too much or add too much oil or flour. So add a little bit at a time, because it also depends on your pan. Some pans cook really fast, so then your flour tends to burn instead of like melding into everything. And it'll also thicken as the flour continues to cook. So we got that going, and as you can see now, we're starting to it's foaming everywhere. We're on the right track. So we're gonna leave it foamy, and we're gonna add in our chicken stock. We're gonna cut our heat up just a smidgen, more than our chicken fried steak, since we're making a sauce here. And we're gonna kind of stir it in, because you'll start to see it thicken. You see how it's already starting to thicken, guys, on camera? So it's got a nice consistency to it, and it's gonna pull together really quick. There you go. You see now we're starting to move it with the spatula, and it's actually kind of sticking where it is first, because it's thickening up. So I like my chicken fried steak. Some people like it with brown gravy. So if you like brown gravy, instead of chicken stock, you can use beef stock, and then you can actually stop at this step if you want to, if you like brown gravy. But I'm a cream gravy kind of gal, so I'm gonna add some heavy cream, and just a little bit at a time. You don't have to add too much in the beginning. Once you feel like you've got the right color consistency, or if it's creamy enough for you. Because sometimes I like what they call a chicken gravy, because it's kind of the same color as what we're getting right now. So it's not super creamy, but it's not super thin in color either. Or you can go for like that stark white cream gravy that you get at the Old Country Diner that just tastes like milk. You could do that depending on your flavor taste. So I'm gonna add a little bit more, because I want to thin it out a little bit. I don't want it too thick, because I kind of want it to like run on the sides. And then we'll cut our heat back down we've got it thick. So heat controls how your sauces thicken. So the lower your heat, the slower your sauces will thicken. So if you're wanting to cook faster, yes, you're gonna cut up your heat. Generally speaking, that does not work in oven time, guys. So if you cut your oven on 500, it's not necessarily gonna make your chicken cook super fast. It's just gonna burn the hell out your chicken. Okay, so for me, this is probably like the perfect color. And then I'm just gonna finish it with some butter. Yes, this is a fattening dish, you guys. This is why I said this is your guilty pleasure moment, or this is my guilty pleasure. So we add that butter in there, and it's gonna make it super creamy. Oh my gosh. Y'all don't even know. I'm gonna tear this chicken fried steak up. Y'all see me take a bite on camera and then I'm gonna go in like a savage. Now, outside of tasting it to see if you wanna add a little bit more seasoning, this bad boy is done. And we're ready to go. That butter is kind of melted in there. And I'm gonna go ahead and taste it. So I'm gonna tell you, if you're timid with your hands, don't do what I'm about to do. So like, don't pour it on your hand if you're timid, because you're gonna, don't do that, right? But if you're not timid, you can do it. If you are, like, pull your spatula to the side and fan it a little bit and go through all that, like the baby blowing process. You can do that. So for me, I'm gonna add just a little bit more seasoning, but I think it's really, really good. I'm gonna add one more sprinkle of seasoning in there, and then I'm gonna pull this bad boy off, get my macaroni and my Brussels sprouts, and we're gonna plate this up, and you're gonna see this southern dish all on its plate with this gravy goodness. Can't wait to try it. But you know, this is really one of my favorite dishes because it's so home style. It's so home style. It gives me that level of comfort, like when I was a kid and my mom would cook for me. And I think it was a perfect dish for me to cook to start this series, because it showed you not only who I was, but it showed you the care I put in the love into food. I think the spoon my spoon catcher tells you a little bit about me. And I think happiness is homemade. You know, I don't mind buying really good food, but I'm not gonna sit there and eat McDonald's and stuff like that. It's just not good for you. Now, if I'm in a rush or if I'm poor, that happens every blue moon, I'll eat at McDonald's. I'm not saying we're all not human and that we're not gonna do it. But I think just like anything, you make the commitment to people to fall in love. You make the commitment to go to school and get an education. You make the commitment to go to a job every day. Why can't we commit to cooking and really taking each other back to that loving place? Because I guarantee you, we all have a meal that brings back love to us. So, all right, guys, we're gonna pull this off the stove and plate everything. All right, guys, so I've put everything out so you can see it all together. But you see that macaroni and cheese? We put that cheese on top. It's all broily and good. I would touch it, but it already burnt me once. So to be honest, I don't want to touch it again right now. But normally with plating style, I try to be a little fancy. But for me, this meal is not a fancy type of meal. This is a put it on the plate and grub type of meal. So not even gonna pretend to do that. So I'm just gonna throw these Brussels sprouts on here with that bacon in there, and they've got a nice crunch to them. Now, for some people, they'll say, oh, those are burnt. They're not burnt, they're just charred. You're not gonna die. But that burnt charredness is really, really good on these. So and throw those on the plate, and I'm putting them all on the plate, guys. I'm portion control. Who's that today? So we're gonna throw it all on there, because that's that good flavor. I'm gonna put a mound of this, and you hear it's got that nice crunch to it when you break into that crust. I actually probably will still have to touch this thing, even though I don't want to, because it is hot. Mac and cheese. I'm gonna get another scoop on that plate, because I'm like, yeah, you see that brown goodness, but I'm gonna just pour on top of that brown goodness and just let it flow. And then I could use tongs, but we're gonna throw this chicken fried steak on this plate. And I'm just gonna pour my gravy away on top. I wanna make sure I get some of those mushrooms on there first though. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. Now if you want, you can be pretty, but instead I'm just gonna grab a fork and a knife and I'm gonna chow down. All right, guys, so I'm about to dig into this, but you know, like, I'm that weird person. If I have some food that I like really like, I do a little shimmy because I'm super excited. And even though I've enjoyed all the food that I've eaten on this series, this is probably my favorite thing ever in life. And so if I get quiet after I eat, don't take it personal. It's not you, it's the food. It's the food, that's all it is. Okay, ooh. And you can see the inside of it is still moist and it's got a nice crunch to it on the outside. I'm gonna sop up some of that gravy though, because what's a chicken fried steak with no gravy? Oh, look, I'm falling apart. I don't think it's right. I'm gonna try it again. That's so good. It really is. I kind of want to be like, I don't even want to eat the macaroni and Brussels sprouts, but that's just because I'm greedy. You guys, and the chicken fried steak is salty and it's creamy and it's like super cooks well, but The Brussels sprouts with that honey that we use from local bee here in Houston are sweet with a little bit of spice, but they've got the smokiness from the bacon that we put in there. You almost don't feel like you're even eating a vegetable for a second because they're so good. And the mac and cheese, we got it. And I'm like, I gotta wholeheartedly dig in this thing. And you see how hot that is, guys? Like, it's smoking. You're gonna burn my tongue trying to make me eat on camera, you know that? Oh my gosh, guys. Okay, so in the meantime, I'm gonna sit on my couch. I'm probably gonna cut on my favorite TV show, which I probably love, Anthony Bourdain on Food Network, which is kind of crazy that I watch food while I eat food. I don't know if you call that fat, but it's okay. I'm gonna sit this down. I'm gonna take my wine. I'm probably gonna fill this glass a little bit more. And I can't wait to see you on the next episode. I hope you love the series. Talk to you soon. Bye.